wanted to announce just quickly that soon I'll be uploading videos to Telegram, and there'll be my reactions to things I actually believe that I wouldn't want to talk about on YouTube, uh, probably really controversial things. It'll be behind a subscription service, so only available to either the superstar subscribers on my TikTok or available to people that subscribe through the Telegram. Um, and yeah, that'll be under behind a subscription service as well. So I'll be reacting to topics such as abortion, vaxes, um, race, politics on the extremes, um, things that would probably get me banned from YouTube. So I won't be posting that stuff on YouTube, but if you care about my interesting perspectives on those things, which I have many interesting perspectives, I believe, then feel free to either become a superstar subscriber through the TikTok or to subscribe on the Telegram, which will be just for me, whereas the TikTok is also for my daughter who was killed by Nottingham City Hospital and they tried to cover it up. I'll probably also put something on Telegram about my actual thoughts and feelings about what happened when my daughter was killed. So stick around. Okay, let's go.
In 1913, Britain controlled a quarter of the world's landmass. Imagine one country ruling 1/4 of Earth. But the even crazier part, just over a century later, economists are comparing the same Britain to Mississippi, which is the poorest state in America. I found it a little absurd, so I started.
Yeah, first of all, when people say Britain controls all these places, really it was a really small select number of people who were of certain tribes that you can't really mention, and also of royalty and certain aristocratic backgrounds. Um, so it wasn't like the average, peasant working a farm or a field or something that controlled this stuff. So it's funny when people talk about like, we ran this, like you didn't really, it was just the crown and their associates. But yeah, that's funny. I always say this on live about how even a couple states in the US beats the whole UK. And like, yeah, New England versus the UK, New England wins by far.
Digging into the numbers. And man, was I startled by what I learned. I mean, how does a country go from ruling a fourth of humanity to struggling with basic stuff like healthcare, housing, and wages?
Borrowing costs have reached a 27-year high.
What happened to all the wealth they took from all the nations? I had to find the accurate answers, so I did what I always do. I went there myself. I spent 10 days investigating modern Britain, speaking to people across classes, professions, locals, immigrants, and the on-ground reality I discovered was a reality so complex, it changed everything I thought I knew about developed economies.
The rule here is if you're in a hole, stop digging.
So in classic Aevy style, I'm going to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of a former empire in transformation.
What an attractive woman. It's interesting though, like, if you actually live in the UK as well, aside from the economics, which, if you're rich, you're going to have a better way of getting through things, but you can actually feel this on the ground really, really heavily. When you speak to people, everybody hates it. The only people that still think the UK is good, I think they're just genuinely deluded people that haven't really traveled much. Even the weather sucks. Not to mention, healthcare, all this stuff. And to be honest, again, I have controversial opinions on some of these things, but I really do think that this is a byproduct of socialism. Socialism and mass immigration, are they really compatible? Maybe I'll do a video on politics, right-wing politics, left-wing politics on Telegram, both extremes, and then where I lie on some perspectives.
On the moment I arrived at Heathrow, I was extremely excited because I've grown up reading Enid Blyton, Sherlock Holmes, Jane Austen, which are all set right here. As soon as I stepped out, I met my first local right here and I started with the questions. He was from Nigeria and he had moved to London years ago. He was a driver and was living
I met my first local. He was from Nigeria.
on the outskirts, paying £1,700 as rent for a family of 4. It was a short chat, but he was quite happy, to be honest, as he said that the standard of education for his children in state schools here was way better what he would have been able to give them in his own country. He also casually mentioned that Nigeria is now one of the largest sources of immigrants to the UK, but he added with a smile, Indians are still number one. So I looked up the numbers, it was right. India ranks number 1, making up 20% of immigrants that come to UK. In 2023 alone, 250,000 Indians moved here to study and work. You know this.
Another interesting thing about the UK and like the immigration issue is, again, I don't want to get into politics in this video, but from my experience, most of the wealthy, esteemed, interesting, creative people that you meet in the UK are not actually British. Now, there are, of course, Britain has had, a lot of ideological exports to the world. You can't take that away from them. There's many high IQ British people, we know that. But they don't have the same aura, and a lot of the people you meet in the UK that are cool, interested in getting things done, they are genuinely from other places, whether it's Nigeria, India, the USA, even other European countries. Especially if you go up north in the UK. So London is the economic powerhouse, and London is barely even British. So this is not an indictment of the English or the British. It's more an indictment of the UK and how its wealth is structured. It's all centered in London, and then everywhere else just kind of is mediocre.
So much Indian influence in some areas. I mean, there are signs in Punjabi on railway stations in areas like Southall in London. And this diversity isn't accidental. London has become a global epicenter for one simple reason: money. This one city is worth more than $618 billion. That's larger than the entire economy of Argentina. It's a good thing and a bad thing. The bad parts, though, we'll come to later. But the question
London is worth way more than 618 billion. I don't know how they came up with that number, but it's way more than that. Trillions easily. Like, if someone was going to buy London, you really think they would be able to buy it for 618 billion? It's worth way more than that.
question is, why is London so insanely rich? See, when Britain ruled 1/4 of the world, they built an entire financial system where global trade flowed through London. And even though the empire is gone, that system stayed. So I met this 29-year-old Indian trader who's making around £200,000 in London, who explained it perfectly. He's like, look at.
And that's an extortionately large salary for London. It's not like you're crazy rich, but like for the UK, that's a very, very big salary. I mean, obviously in the city of London, there's a lot of people that earn that, like the financial centre. The funny thing about London is that the reason why there's so much wealth flowing through it is because of the financial instruments. And the financial instruments are literally like the banking system and other intangible things. So there's a lot of fraud going on. But whenever it's white collar or it has the air of legitimacy, things that are blatant fraud sometimes don't look like fraud, like usury.
Around you, we're literally in between New York and Tokyo. When New York closes, we start trading. When we wind up, Tokyo takes over. London is perfectly placed to be the world's trading hub. And also witness the brilliant research that's happening at DeepMind at the intersection of science and AI.
You can't take the science and technology and the education system away from the UK. But that is one of the fortes if you want to get educated, learn about science and technology.
People who I met here, a lot of them from London itself, they're dedicated their whole lives to science and research, just working to push humanity forward. How how the smartest minds are pushing the boundaries of AI and science, and this was all happening right here in London.
Interesting. I wonder how many of those people are actually English heritage that were coming up with that stuff. Hmm.
This is where UK story gets really, really interesting. So one side you have this city, these people doing groundbreaking scientific research, moving global finance, attracting the world's best talent, brilliant transportation and connectivity. And then you have the rest of the UK.
Literally, like she's pretty much spot on that. And it's crazy because where I'm from is right near the city. It became more the city as London expanded. It's called Islington, but yeah, that little section of the UK is great. You know, if you like a city, and as opposed to living rurally where you can have the sun, high quality meat, you can hunt, have a big ass house, and have lots of children. Like, if you want to live an actual human reality, then yeah, you don't want to be in the center of London. But if you want to, you know, play in the system, the matrix, as they say, you want to play with the numbers on a screen and make more numbers and be able to get around easily to do it. It's great. I mean, I've worked in central London as well. Makes you feel very nice. But as in terms of human experience, you have to be very brainwashed to actually enjoy a life like that. Because, for example, you come out at lunchtime and there's no real good places to eat. It's all like vegan bun restaurants and pastry and stuff. And then, like, it's a fast paced lifestyle. You huddled onto the tube with loads of other people. And if you can drive, fair play to you, but the traffic's horrendous. You can't really commute that way. So, yeah, you're huddled onto the tube with a bunch of people that haven't had enough sleep, and you can tell by how they look, and they haven't had enough sunlight, and you can tell by how they look. So that commuter lifestyle into central London, I've done it, and for a decent job as by UK standards. But if you want to be an actual human being, yeah.
So one of the locals I met told me that London might as well be a different country. If you're ambitious, there's no other choice. You have to come to London if you're in the UK. All the money flows to the golden triangle, that's Oxford, Cambridge or London. I was like, what about the other cities that are top universities?
That's interesting. That's true, but that Oxford, Cambridge, London thing, I've never actually heard it described that way. No one in London really cares about Oxford or Cambridge or regularly goes there unless they're like university alumni or something like that from Oxford or Cambridge. The Oxford and Cambridge are decent cities. They look pretty nice. Most wealthy people would probably rather live in Oxford or Cambridge unless they're really wealthy and can live in central London, or unless they like renting. But if you actually want to build a family and lifestyle, Oxford or Cambridge might be a better shout. Unless you live in North London, or there's places in every part of London, North, West, East, South, that are you can raise a family. But again, you'd have to be part of that kind of matrix of parents working, decent job, coming back, either renting or paying some kind of mortgage. If you've got loads of money, sure, great. I don't know why anyone with loads and loads of money would live in Oxford, Cambridge, or London, like when you can buy acres and acres of land. But some people like that lifestyle and that accessibility. To be fair, if I was super rich, I'd probably buy a house in London just because of the location and the accessibility. So maybe I contradicted my point there. Let's see.
Spread across UK, right? He was like, yeah, but you still have to move here if you really want to make it. This might be curious, so I dug deeper into this because this was a recurring comment I kept hearing from everyone. So there's this concept that I learned about, which the economists call the two-speed economy. It's basically when one part of the country charges ahead and the rest of it lags behind. Kind of like a business pouring all its resources into one ultra-profitable department while the rest of it is neglected. This is what's happening to UK right now. People literally talk about UK as London and the rest of UK. Let me show you.
And the rest of the UK sucks bad. And people from the rest of the UK will cope and tell you that it doesn't. It's good if you have like I say, a kind of suburban or rural lifestyle, but the weather's trash. The people are not very high culture or even have much life experience. It's like I said, the weather really is bad. The food is not good. All you can really do is watch football or go out on like a night out and get drunk with a lot of people that like to poison themselves until they throw up or have, you know, promiscuous activities. Have I been a part of that stuff before? Of course. I'm not like trying to sit on my high horse or anything. I'm just giving you the reality of what the UK actually is. Most of those places, if you're from like a really nice city in the US or from if you're wealthy in another part of the world, if you go up north in the UK, yeah, unless you go to, I've heard Glasgow is nice, but any of those cities like in the Midlands or you know West Midlands, Yorkshire, is dotted nice things, but generally, if you're from an actual nice place or you're from an actual wealthy background, you'd probably be thinking, "Get me home."
Some interesting stats. London generates almost half of Britain's financial services revenue, but it only has 13% of Britain's population. So if you were to remove London's output and headcount from Britain,
1350.
it would shave 14% of British living standards. Let me put this in perspective. Let's say if you were to remove San Francisco's opulent output, US GDP per capita would only dip by 4%. If you remove Mumbai from India, it would dip by 5 to 6%. If you remove Germany's most productive city, Munich, only 1% would go.
Wow.
But for UK, man, the magnitude of UK's economic dependency on London. This, by the way, has also had its own repercussions. Let me tell you the stories of a few locals I met on this journey. Their stories will shine a spotlight on what's really happening. So,
again, those numbers, like, I feel like if London went, it'd be even more. Because, yeah, okay, you can quantify it by, like, okay, where is the wealth coming from in the country? But a lot of the people who have the wealth in other places in the UK have connections to London. So they might be commuting into London for work, or they might work like remotely, a job that's based in London, or their headquarters of their company will be based in London. And without London, their company wouldn't be able to move their headquarters or wouldn't stand to gain from moving their headquarters somewhere up north. So I feel like it's not 14%. It's like, I feel like the whole UK is basically London. But what do I know?
one of the gentlemen I met, he had come to UK, Manchester for masters and was now doing a marketing job in London because he wasn't getting good pay anywhere else. He was really distressed about his housing and he told me the story of how he was paying £950 for a one-bedroom flat in South London, and then one day, suddenly, out of nowhere, his landlord casually says, next month rent is going up by 26%, pay £1,200 or leave. He tried reasoning with him, telling him, I've lived here for a long time, I'm a good tenant, but no luck. That 26% was non-negotiable. And
yeah, when they said 950, I was like, that's kind of low. Then someone told me, oh yeah, one bedroom cuck shed. Good going. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, a lot of the people who make up the GDP per capita or the average income stats, those are those people living in a cuck shed, barely even get any meat, barely get any sunlight. You miss, like, you're waking up at stressful hours like 6:30 a.m. and then you're literally like commuting on a sweaty train with a load of other like soulless individuals. And then, like, yeah, you might be earning a good 50k, 60k, thousand salary, 60,000 salary in pounds or something, maybe even more, maybe 100k. But like, look at your quality of life, and then you're paying rent like 1,200 a month in rent, and then if you're earning 100k, you're getting taxed on that. So you might pay up to 45% tax. So that's paying for the NHS and all the other lovely, amazing things that the UK offers, which are all trash, by the way. But yeah, so you got like 50k after that, take home pay, something like that. Then you're paying rent. That's if you're paying 1,200 to live in your little cuck shed. How much do you really have at the end of the year? You paid up 15k, 15, 16k on rent. Then you got what, 30, 45k left? Food and amenities and everything, you got 30k. So you're doing all that, 100k that you got like 30k left. That's not even to mention all the other things people have to pay for, like commute, 30K. So per month, what have you got to, after take home every month? What, like 2.5K, something like that, bro? That's what people get on the dole.
It's not just him. In 2022, London rents spiked by 17%, the biggest jump since 2007. You know, average single earners in London now spend half their income on rent.
Average spends half. It's even worse. This is what I'm saying. If you had 100K, then that's what your numbers. Imagine if you're earning 60, and 60K is like a high salary, right, for the UK. And then it's like you got to think, okay, yeah, maybe I'm being obtuse, but we're talking about you're not getting any sunlight. You know, you're not having a proper lifestyle where you're free, able to do what you want. You can't have weapons. You can't shoot. You can't. Like you. This is a basic city dweller life. Like it's dirty. You're living in places where there may be crime. Like I don't know. The grass is always greener, isn't it?
And here's the shocking part. House prices have shot up 1,000% since the 1980s, while the wages have barely kept up. Why? See, councils used to build 100,000 homes every year, but they sold them off in the 80s and never built more. So now there are fewer homes, more people who need them, and prices that keep climbing higher and higher.
And yet the councils still get loads of money, and then they're bankrupt, so they're still spending more money than they receive. That's probably why they focus most of their time and effort on like trafficking kids, so they can get a bigger budget. I mean, that is the largest budgetary contribution increase that they've had in the past like 2 decades or whatever. The reason why they get a lot of money, one of the primary reasons, no, the primary reason is the increase in budget necessary for children's safeguarding, which means child trafficking in the UK. Yeah, into the foster care system for frivolous reasons. But I'll do a video on that another time, probably. Obviously, it doesn't apply to every child that needs safeguarding, but that's what the councils focus on. That's their new moneymaker. So why the hell do they care if people getting housing or not? If people can't afford housing, oh, you can't afford housing, you can't afford this, your lifestyle's bad. Come and take your kids then. Works out better for them.
It's like everyone's fighting over fewer and fewer spaces while paying more than ever before. I'll tell you another thing I learned about housing and property, something called inheritance tax. Let's say you want to avoid paying these exorbitant rents and you put together money to buy a property and then eventually want to pass it on to your kids. That also they've made difficult because your child has to pay 40% inheritance tax just to inherit this property from
40%. I'm sure there's easy ways around it, but imagine the level of belligerence that a government has towards you when they're like, oh, you want to give your children what you worked your whole life for? 40% tax.
the parent. Now talking about taxes, the taxes in UK are brutal. The minute you hit £50,000, you're paying 40% of it to the government.
Oh, and you know what's funny? People always talk about taxes and they're like, oh, yes, we've got a beautiful NHS. And it's like, I always do the numbers on this in front of everyone. The average UK citizen pays more towards the NHS, more towards healthcare on average than the average US citizen as a percentage of their total salary. So a US citizen pays more, but as a percentage of the salary, it's like 9% for a UK citizen, and then like 12% for a UK citizen, and 9% of the average salary for a US citizen. So then they're not getting freedom of choice. They double the waiting times, like terrible, like once the terrible health outcomes, we've got better quality of food and stuff. So that means our health outcomes are better than like the United States, but not good quality of service. You're waiting ages for it. You wait. A lot of people aren't seen or they get misdiagnosed. We're paying a lot of taxes. We're not getting much for it. Crime is on the rise. I think sometimes there's a lot of delusion with UK citizens about how much we're being abused or victimized by the system and the councils. Even if you look at council tax, extortion by definition. But when you talk about this stuff, you kind of seem like a quack in the UK. There's not much diversity of ideas, considering the level of diversity otherwise, and considering the amount of like different people that come in and out. You'd think that people would be more open-minded to not being taken advantage of anymore, if you know what I mean. like what they did in France a long time ago.
One frustrated local was telling me that it's weird how my household income has literally doubled from what it was 10 years ago, and still somehow we have less money to spend. He was like, we no longer have a car payment, we eat out less, we get coffee less, we haven't had credit card for over 5 years, have no credit card payments, and somehow still we have less disposable income now than we did before. Just buying the things we need to survive is taking up 95% of our money.
Buying our bread, buying our tea. What else do we need to buy? Biscuits. Like, it's not like you're buying, like, oh, I got a new 357, baby. Like no, like you're buying like bread, tea, hula hoops. Like, people, if you look at the average, like if you get the average shopping cart for a UK citizen, it's like this stuff is not the food of kings. It could be, but there's not much to spend your money on that can give you real quality of human life, unless you just have loads of kids and you can spend your money on your kids. But again, that's frowned upon in the UK. So I don't know what these people are buying. From when I see people stuff, people, oh, I bought lemon infused herbal tea. I bought high quality bread from the bakers.
Money. Now the question here is, why has it gotten this bad? Well, the UK is broke. Austerity through two successive, extraordinarily expensive and damaging crises, Brexit, then COVID, then the Russia-Ukraine war, has left the UK with an enormous debt burden. See, the pandemic forced the government to pour billions into relief efforts.
Forced the government. The pandemic forced the government to do this. Okay.
Further ballooning the national debt and leaving less room for crucial investments that are required in housing and healthcare. With the Bank of England hiking interest rates to combat inflation, the cost of servicing that debt has skyrocketed, further straining public finances. Even the energy crisis from the war is so bad that the British households were projected to pay 3 times the previous price just to heat their homes during the winter. One of my friends was telling me that it was so absurd to be in London during this Christmas because most of the houses were dark.
Bruh. Like, again, I'm not trying to be a dick, but it's just like, this is genuinely how many, many millions of people live in the UK. And then they they defended this. Look at this. To be honest, you don't have to have a big house either to have a good quality of life. But it's just funny how this is a rich country, and it's like the quality of life, like in an area like that, a typical place like that, most people will be drinking, smoking. They're not exactly improving their genetics for the next generation. You'll be lucky if you can get in your garden and sunbathe when the sun comes out 5 times a year. From what it looks like, a place like that might not have too much crime, but can you even park your fucking car there? Or it may have loads of crime. Are you living among your countrymen? I know, I'm not exactly English, but is that what you're getting? What is someone that lives there getting for living in the UK? What's the trade-off? Or is that just a place to live? Because this is why a lot of people in the UK are just deciding to leave. I think they lost 10,000 millionaires recently or something like that. I can't remember the time span, but people who can afford to move are getting out of the UK. And that's not even to mention being arrested for speech crimes, which I've been arrested for speech crimes, wrongfully, obviously, and other things which I'll talk about on Telegram. But yeah, you don't really get much for living in the UK anymore if you live like this.
Dark. Very few people lit their houses because they simply don't have money to pay the extremely high electricity bills. He even jokingly said that if you want exposure, sure, yeah, come to London, but if you're not in finance or tech and you want to make money, run in the opposite direction. Also, this is not it. Let me tell you the next problem. So I met a nurse. She was in her mid-30s, full-time in the National Health Service.
People like that are literally who's ruining the UK. I'm telling you, This is like your quintessential, like, believes the 2019 narrative. Like, even you could just tell by the haircut. Like, I know this is like not exactly nice to say, but I'm just the age range. Like, I guarantee you, like, this individual's probably on SSRIs, working for the NHS, brainwashed probably to think that the NHS is doing great. Like, this is just quintessential, like, UK ruiner.
Was earning around £45,000. She was very proud of her profession, saying that, the NHS was once the jewel in Britain's crown, but now she said every single person's leaving.
We're not just understaffed, we're burnt out. I've worked through COVID and endless winter crises. And now, the queue for operations is over 7 million people.
Yeah, it's like the longest waiting list ever. And they always do this with the NHS. They push this narrative of like, oh, we're understaffed and overworked. Yeah, it's mad corruption, organized crime from senior management, the COVID narrative that they perpetrated on the population. And then they act as though they just couldn't help it. Like, all the people that have been harmed through that, and then the lack of trust in the institution, the NHS, as a result of it. And then these people still act like, oh, we're overworked and stuff. Like, motherfucker, like, you did this to us. Like, what you mean? You did it to everyone else. And then you're like, oh, we're understaffed and overworked. Like, the only good, like, NHS, like, workers are, like, the whistleblowers. They'll tell you the truth about how it goes.
Bonkers.
The National Health Service has 124,000 empty positions right now, from doctors to nurses to support staff, and thousands more are planning to quit. Where are they going? They're either jumping to private healthcare for better pay or leaving the country entirely. Meanwhile, 7.4 million people are waiting for treatments and surgeries. Even when the NHS gets more money, it can't keep up because they're dealing with an aging population, expensive new drugs, and trying to match staff salaries with inflation.
Receiving record funding every year, almost every year since its inception.
And the really scary part? These hospitals are spending so much on emergencies that they don't have any funds to train their staff or even buy new equipment. It's kind of like fixing a leaking boat, but more and more holes keep on appearing. And who's paying the price for all of this? People like this nurse. The story of modern Britain.
And all the normal people that wanted to be left alone in 2019 onwards and don't want to be taxed up. I mean, people like that nurse, not that individual, I don't know, obviously. If they really knew the cause of the problems, they probably wouldn't even work for an organization like that. And they probably vote for the kind of things that we end up with. And people like myself and others who want different kinds of solutions are seen as radical, hateful, and we get arrested for our ideas.
At a human level is quite stark. From struggling to build a home to finding affordable healthcare, every single person is feeling the pangs of a decaying nation. Except the folks in finance, I guess. Everyone I spoke to who worked in finance was pretty happy.
That'll do. So, I'll be honest, there's some good things about the UK. Infrastructure, transport. Location-wise, it's good. You can, meet with people quite easily. But one of the main issues is the people, the mindset, stuck in these old ways of thinking about quality of life, thinking that working is some kind of virtue and that just by hustling and working really hard and having a number on a screen that tells you that you're doing well, that's quality of life, when in reality, you're not getting sunlight. Like I said, outside of London, you're not even getting the numbers on the screen. So what is it really for if you don't have lots of children, if you don't have your local community, your ethnicity around you? I'm a guy that likes to go where I'm welcome, so I understand I might not be compatible with London, whereas other people might be. The English people didn't really fight much, but they've been being subjugated by the crown for a very long time. So I don't know what the solution is. I think, people just leave, and all the people that like being an economic servant, serf, slave, can stay there and enjoy it. They probably like it. Get more jabs. But the YouTube. Get more jags, worship the NHS more, worship the numbers on the screen more, and have a cup of tea. Grass is always greener, isn't it? I'm not complaining. You guys love it. You take it. Not for me. Not my cup of tea. But thanks for watching the video. I am from the UK, like I said, so I'm not trying to shit on the UK, but I'm just keeping it real. Leave your thoughts in the comments if you get a chance, and if you want me to react to any videos, let me know.